Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Monday Q&A. So let's get this done. First question. Any necessary training modifications when switching to a ketogenic style diet? You know, we could debate this one all day long. There's a couple schools of thought here. Some people would say no, the body adapts, everything's fine, and weight training and resistance training doesn't burn through that many calories, so just do it and keep your cardio with list so that it burns fatty acids as a fuel substrate more than it does glucose, and blah blah blah. And that's one school of thought. And then you have other schools of thought, guys like Jamie Lewis, who again, world record holder in powerlifting, stays ripped year round. He does ketogenic diets most of the time, but he trains almost exclusively with lower reps most of the time when doing keto, because again, it has to do with fuel substrates and the fact that he's not burning through enough glucose in his training because of the metabolic components of training with 3 reps and less all the time, even with high volumes of it. He just doesn't need as much glucose. It's not as big of a deal when in a ketogenic diet. And there may be some truth to that, and I'm tending to train a bit like that myself, similar to what he recommends these days while I'm doing a ketogenic diet. And there may be some truth to that, but in all honesty, it really depends on how hard of an edge you're pushing. If you're competing at a very high level in sports and your performance at 0.5% edge makes a massive difference, you might want to consider definitely what someone like Jamie's saying. But if you're just training for general purposes and you're not really strong, you're not really competitive, it may not even be necessary to adapt your training very much, or if all, to go with a dietary approach like that based upon the intake of macronutrients. So it's not a straightforward answer. It's kind of one of those, it depends. All right, next question. What do you think of UD 2.0 in practice? UD 2.0 is a fantastic system for recomposition. I've recommended it in the past. I've seen it work firsthand in people, and what I can say there, in practice, it absolutely works. However, is it a diet that everyone can follow or that someone's going to want to keep up with long term? Probably not. That's what makes it an issue in practice. It isn't very practical. It requires a lot of discipline, a lot of major modifications to your lifestyle based around specific eating days, and for a lot of people it just simply in practice isn't necessarily going to be doable, even if it is one of the better, most effective, most scientifically accurate ways to do pretty good body recomposition. It really is a lot of work and hassle, and it may not fit with everyone's lifestyle. So that's the issue with it from a practical perspective. Theoretically, it is fantastic. In practice, it may not work for everybody because of just the rigorousness and the strictness of that goes with it. It's certainly not for everybody. But does it work? Yes, it absolutely works. All right, next question. You've spoken about muscle tightness for those who work in a predominantly seated environment. But what about the issues that arise when someone is stood for extended periods of time without rest? I personally experience hip/glute tightness and knee pain from this. Okay, the truth is that's actually better than the seated. We are, as a species, well developed to being on our feet literally all day long, particularly men. We're structurally built for this as part of our evolutionary process. But the issues become, when we do this in the modern world of standing, is that you may be on concrete a lot rather than out on the ground. And if you're out on concrete, concrete has a certain shock that it puts on the body, and it's a really fantastic for structural purposes for buildings and things because of the way it absorbs shock. But the issues with it for people who walk on it all day, it can be hard on your connective tissue. It can be hard on your ankles, your knees, and your hips. And so if you're going to be on your feet on concrete all day, it's really worth your while to do some research and invest in some really good shoes. Now, I can't tell you what's currently on the market because I haven't looked at this in a long time. I haven't had to spend large amounts of time on the concrete in a long time, so I'm unfamiliar with the brands and things. But if you do some research, your shoes, the type of cushions you use in them, things like that, can actually help alleviate those problems and resolve it. The issue there is probably that you're probably on concrete for 8 hours a day standing. And that's the issue, not so much the fact that you're actually standing. So you need to change your shoes and your footwear to compensate for that, and it'd be worth the money to do it. All right, next question. Hey Jason, is it okay to start the deadlift over my toes instead of the middle of my foot? It allows me to get my spine more neutral in the starting position. It might allow you to do that because you have bad technique. What you need to do is start it over the midfoot the correct way, and you need to adjust your hip height and hip position and your starting point to compensate for that. You're going to have to experiment with that more rather than using the bar position to make it easier, because you're putting yourself at a mechanical disadvantage that is going to make it harder for you to lift a heavy weight. You're going to be able to get more tension and better leverages if you start it a little further back and you adjust your start position to compensate. That's really the way to go. You're trying to do a band-aid fix for a bad technique by starting with the bar further forward, and you're only hurting yourself. You need to get your technique down so that you can start with the bar further back and mid-foot and gain the advantage of those leverages and less strain on your lower back and everything else, rather than try to use a band-aid fix because your technique isn't good by starting with the bar further forward. Trust me on this one. All right, next question. I get shoulder pain that is also connected with some pain around where the bicep connects around the elbow after and while benching. I'm doing my best to keep scapula retracted and to ensure my elbows are tucked inward and bringing the bar down to around my nipple, but I still get the pain. What is going on and how can I diagnose the problem? All right, your issue there is probably a brachialis issue. There's a couple things you could do there. You could probably strengthen the brachialis up by doing some hammer curls from time to time. Wouldn't be a bad idea for you. The other thing to consider is that there's something wrong with your technique. If something is hurting and you're getting any sort of sharp pains, there's something wrong with your technique, and you're probably going to injure yourself potentially if you keep doing it. Now, if you said you're starting right at the nipple, I would adjust it a little bit. You might need to bring your grip in just a hair. Maybe you're gripping too wide. It's putting strain up on the whole bicep and could be in the shoulder here too. And I think you said, did you say that? Yeah, you get the shoulder pain also. Okay, you probably need to bring that grip in just another inch or so from wherever you're at and bring the bar another inch lower. Instead of right at the nipple, once you bring it down another inch or two, bring it just lower on the chest, bring the grip in about an inch and see how you feel doing it that way. And hopefully that should improve your situation. That would be my first fix. If that doesn't work, I'll throw it up in another Q&A and let's see if we can break it down further. But that would be my recommendations. Throw in some hammer curls, bring the grip in just a little, bring the bar a little lower down the chest, and see if that doesn't resolve the issue for you a bit. All right, next question. Will using a suicide grip while doing bicep curls with a bar isolate the bicep and therefore being a more effective bicep exercise? Thanks. No, and this is bodybuilder type logic. This is why a lot of us talk about this and say bodybuilders don't understand training. Bodybuilders think that you can actually isolate a muscle. You can't do it. It doesn't work. And the whole idea that just because if you're using some suicide grip and it's taking all the other muscles out of the equation, that it somehow makes the bicep grow faster, it doesn't work that way. Bicep doesn't care what other muscles are assisting as long as it's getting tension on it. The only exception being is that, with the wrist angle, sometimes if you're curling up like this, you are taking direct tension off the bicep, a dramatic amount, and putting it onto the forearm. So there's reasons to let the wrist trail behind. But the thing is, even that would be okay if it let you put another 15 pounds on the dumbbell because you're still getting the tension. It's not about isolating a muscle, it's how much tension you can put on it. If for you personally, you can put more tension on the bicep with a barbell curl instead of a chin up, you're going to get better results from the barbell curl. If you can get more tension on the bicep for you personally with a chin up, even with the back doing all that extra work, you're going to get more development on the bicep from the chin up. It's purely about tension. It doesn't care whether how much a muscle is isolated. And the fact that you can't even isolate a muscle, it's impossible, even though we call things isolation movements because there's one joint involved, just radiant effect and other stuff in the body, it is impossible to actually isolate a muscle. It doesn't work that way in the human body. So quit thinking in those terms. You think in terms of, am I getting enough tension on it? It doesn't matter if other muscles are involved. It matters how much total mechanical tension and fatigue you put on that muscle. So you got to change your mindset there. All right, next question. Where can we put tactical and firearm-related questions adjacent? Any plans for a Q&A on the tactical channel? Guys, just the tactical channel, just send private messages there. I read them about once a week, and if guys throw some interesting questions there, I may throw them into videos, and I have already. Just private message the channel. As far as a Q&A for it goes, I don't know. I've got to build that channel up. I've got to see what the market likes and go from there. I may not ever do a regular Q&A session on that channel. That seems to work really well for something like a fitness channel. I don't know if that's going to be a good idea for a tactical and firearm channel. I haven't decided yet. I'll need to fill the channel out and think on it in 6 or 8 months and see what the audience seems to like and grow the channel. That channel, there's a lot of work to be done still to make it a good channel. I'm working on it, but it's going to take some time to really feel it out like I had to do with the fitness channel. All right, next question and last question of the week. Hi Jason, I took a health class last semester, HE 100, and in one of the chapters on nutrition it basically said that parts of the central nervous system and brain require carbohydrates as a fuel source, making carbs an essential nutrient. Is this true? Thanks. No, that isn't true. Essential nutrient means two things. It can't just mean one. It's not an either or. It has to be both. It has to mean that it is something that your body requires for survival and health, and that your body cannot produce on its own. Your body can make carbohydrates out of every other type of food. Therefore, carbohydrates cannot be essential. Your body can turn up to 10 to 11% of your dietary fat into glucose, and it can turn around up to 40 to 42% of your dietary protein into glucose. Both of those can convert to dietary carbs, and it is certainly possible to eat enough of those to get enough glucose for your nervous system. Therefore, carbohydrates cannot be an essential nutrient. Now, are carbohydrates beneficial to eat in large amounts? Yeah, for some people and for a lot of athletes, they absolutely are. They may be essential for extreme degrees of athletic performance. Oh, yes, they are, absolutely. But are they an essential nutrient? No, because you can make them out of other things. But do you need to have glucose for your fuel source for your brain? Yes, your brain cannot run on ketones alone. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It absolutely cannot. It requires, I think, up to 50% of its fuel to come from glucose, even if it's running the other 50% off ketones. So you have to have it, but the thing is, you can get that glucose from other things. So carbohydrates are absolutely not essential, although maybe fiber might be something that we should almost start considering an essential nutrient. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. But let me give you guys a bicep shot before I go. Oh, Mount Bicep.